Hello, friends. This is Perla with Missionaries of God's Love in Tustin, California. Remember that when we start our prayers and meditations, it is important for us to want and to wish to find ourselves with God, because God only comes to you when you truly love and look for Him. So today, let's choose to be a follower of the Lord. Let's prepare ourselves for our encounter with God by opening our hearts and preparing our body and mind. Let's start today by sitting upright and our shoulders relaxed. Let's take a deep breath in as we fill ourselves with God's presence. Invite God and the Holy Spirit into your heart and soul. In today's meditation, we are going to talk about how it costs to persevere, but it is the only way to harvest. Today, we will be talking about spiritual life, the friendship with God, to be a part of God's kingdom. It costs to persevere, but it is the only way to harvest. Sometimes when we meditate from the Bible, you may notice there are moments when Jesus would get frustrated because many people did not want to struggle to thrive. People did not want to persevere, and many, my friends, don't want to change their way of thinking. They had a way of thinking that has never allowed them to grow and improve themselves or find a path with God. And they don't want to understand. While they continue to think this way, they will not grow. They will not become a better version of themselves. There's no worse mistake than to keep doing the same thing over and over and expect something to change. Some great thinkers have said that it is a total foolery to think that by repeating the same thing that has given me bad results, to expect it to suddenly give me a positive result. But we should have already learned from this. Jesus says in Matthew chapter 22, verse 14, "For many are invited, but few are chosen." And he says so with so much frustration at the end of his parable of guests at a wedding banquet. He made a notion to how everyone is invited to be a part of God's kingdom, but the majority of the people do not want to accept the invitation. They are not interested. There are some that accept the invitation and start to walk around, but soon enough, they begin to regret their decision upon knowing the efforts that are required, and they prefer to abandon God. Many, my friends, start, but they do not continue. And there, Jesus also gave us another parable, the parable of the sower in Matthew chapter 13. Jesus talks about how he throws the seeds to the soil, to us, in other words. He gives us his words, his invitation, his gospel. But too many people are as hard as the stomped on soil. The ground is so hard that the seeds even bounce back and lay above the ground where the birds, or in other words the devil, come to eat it and consume it. This space is where the devil is able to easily reach us. Others begin to start to walk alongside God, but due to different reasons they do not continue. Jesus said, it's like the seeds that fall between the thorns and rocks. It's sad because they start to grow, but then they soon stop growing and then they die. Jesus was right, my friends. People don't have an interest in becoming better or changing, and if they do, it is usually only for a moment because they don't dare fight to persevere. Sometimes you may have all seen it across people at church. You may see how people start in the communities and the church to walk alongside with God. And after some time, the devil comes and tricks them on behalf of other people or other forms of discouragements, and they stop walking with God. For God, it doesn't stop being frustrating because as a father, he wants to give his best to his children, and yet his children are not showing any interest in receiving his teachings and advice. What should we do then? Well, my friends, we need to realize that even though it costs, it is so much more worth it dedicating our life to God and following him. We should put his teachings as the first priority in our life. Nothing in this life can give me the sentiment and peace or future eternity that Jesus offers those that follow him. Let's look at this point in the imitation of Christ. Alas, after very little recollection we falter, not weighing our deeds by strict examination. We pay no attention to where our affections lie, nor do we deplore the fact that our actions are impure. Remember that because all flesh had corrupted its course, the great deluge followed. Since then our interior affection is corrupt. It must be that the action which follows from it, the index, as it were, of our lack of inward strength, is also corrupt. Out of a pure heart come the fruits of a good life. People are wont to ask how much a man has done, but they think little of the virtue with which he acts. They ask, is he strong, rich, handsome, a good writer, a good singer, or a good worker? They say little, however, about how poor he is in spirit, how patient and meek, how devout and spiritual. This is, my friends, is sadly what people care less about others. They look at mundane things, big mundane things, and not what really matters, the spiritual. I'll continue reading, my friends. Nature looks to his outward appearance. Grace turns to his inward being. The one often errs, the other trusts in God and is not deceived. In other words, my friends, to follow God, apart from perseverance, we need to think differently to how the world thinks. And we need to start to think how God thinks. We need to meditate more and get to know Jesus better. Read the gospel to get to know God more. We need to grow, my friends. It costs to persevere, but it is the only way to harvest. Now, take the time you need for prayer and tell him, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening."